Dust hangs over the flight line and presses into the combined Wing Operations Center and Base Defense Operations Center. Alarms pulse in short bursts that come and go with the heat shimmer. Inside the cramped room, blue screens and red overlays crowd the walls, while fans push warm air across stacks of binders and radios. The mood is busy, clipped, and used to noise. Staff Sergeant Morgan Reed sits at a console that faces the big map. She is an admin and command support non-commissioned officer with a calm, checklist rhythm that never feels rushed. Years ago, she trained in Tactical Air Control Party and did not qualify as a Joint Terminal Attack Controller. She kept the cadence, the grid math, and the habit of writing the plan before anyone asks. People around her mark her as just admin and move on. The boundary is not soft, and she knows it by heart. Stay in your lane. Do not transmit on the close air support net. Do not issue target clearance. The rules are the fence line that she will not cross. Technical Sergeant James Ortiz works 10 feet away as the senior JTAC attached to the base defense cell. Colonel Karen Whitaker watches from a remote screen and asks for status in steady intervals. In the stack, Major Daniel Price checks in as A-10C flight, lead hog 2-1 with forward air controller airborne qualification. Morgan tapes a cracked headset, sets an ANPRC 117G on the desk. Updates have quick 2 notes with a time hack read as 2:30 p.m. Pins a 9-line card by the keyboard, and keeps a military grid reference system layer up by her station. The rule set is bright and simple. Only a JTAC or a FAC airborne can say cleared hot or cleared danger close. Staff Sergeant Reed can log, route communications, and prepare data, but she will not authorize fires. A few coworkers brush past with small cutting remarks that reduce her to forms and folders. And she lets them slide while she notes friendly positions near the East Gate, HESCO, barriers and records, final attack heading limits to keep aircraft south of the runway, center line. Labels hold. Hierarchy holds. And the constraints stay in view. The room settles into a lull that still feels busy, with fans humming and screens stacked with maps. Staff Sergeant Morgan Reed uses the quiet to line up small tasks that keep the picture clean. She syncs Zulu time on the ANPRC 117G and checks the clock against her notebook. She updates the Have Quick 2 word of the day card and slides a 9-line reference next to the keyboard where her hand will find it without looking. Her eyes track the intel feed while her mind runs the grid math faster than the lagging cursor. She sketches military grid reference system coordinates in her head and pins friendly icons near the East Gate HESCO barriers before the system catches up. She writes a final attack heading window on a sticky note to keep aircraft south of the runway center line for safe airspace. The pencil taps stop as she rechecks elevation and marks a simple no-fire line north of the canal. A coworker mentions a rifle with the wrong word, and she corrects it to magazine in a voice that carries only to the desk. She asks permission to route a backup net through a PRC 152A if the primary chat clutters, then waits for the nod before touching a single button. Her log builds in calm lines by Zulu time, each entry short and clear. She seals a crack in the headset cushion with a small strip of tape and tests the mic without bleeding onto the net. The hierarchy stays bright in her head like a checklist. Only the Joint Terminal Attack Controller or the Forward Air Controller airborne will clear weapons release. Morgan stays in her lane. She cleans the radio picture by asking for one transmitter at a time, confirms authentication when asked, and uses exact brevity like say again, all after grid. But she never issues target clearance. At 2:30 p.m., she calls a smooth time hack and moves her mouse through paths she has rehearsed. The checklists sit where her hands expect them, and nothing on the desk needs to be found twice. Around her, people wave off the habits as quirks and return to their screens. The audience can feel the discipline building into quiet readiness while the storm waits outside. Rocket and small drone warnings ripple across the base and pull the operations center tight. The combined Wing Operations Center and Base Defense Operations Center hums with fans, radios, and clipped alarms that start and stop like hiccups. Staff Sergeant Morgan Reed sits at her desk with the duty log open and her headset sealed with a thin strip of tape. She watches the blue and red overlays settle and waits for the next update. Her assignment is simple and strict. Remain at the desk. Maintain the log. Track Echo Convoy near the East Gate HESCO barriers. And support communications routing only when told. She is not a shooter and not a controller. She will not transmit on the close air support net unless directed to relay by an authorized controller. Technical Sergeant James Ortiz holds tactical control as the senior Joint Terminal Attack Controller attached to the base defense cell. Colonel Karen Whitaker monitors from a remote screen and asks for status at calm intervals that cut through the noise. Major Daniel Price checks in as A-10C Flight Lead Hog, 2-1, with Forward Air Controller Airborne Qualification. Holding south with 30mm and GBU-12 and limited playtime. Morgan notes each piece in the margin so the picture does not slide. She annotates friendly locations with care and draws a no-fire line north of the canal for ground and air deconfliction. She writes a final attack heading window that keeps aircraft south of the runway center line and tapes it near the 9-line reference. She records the abort code as alpha and flips to a clean page for potential readbacks. A quiet time check at 2:30 p.m. settles the room by rhythm more than volume. The radio space is crowded with overlapping calls, the low thrum of air conditioning, and the faint rattle of doors as teams move. Morgan keeps her voice inside the room and answers internal questions in short, even phrases. She leaves the close air support net untouched, hands off the keyboard, and lets the experts work. She does not fix anything, does not reach for authority, and watches the stack build overhead while the clock tightens around them. The coordinated strike hits like a drumline out of step. Rockets and small drones press in at once and overwhelm sensors. Alarms stutter through the combined Wing Operations Center and Base Defense Operations Center. The air feels crowded with dust and the low grind of fans. The primary net degrades in seconds. Voices overlap. Step-ons stack. And packets drop until words arrive in pieces. The satellite link turns choppy, as if someone is shaking the cable. Have quick 2 becomes the likely fallback that everyone is thinking about, but no one can hear cleanly. Echo Convoy is pinned near the East Gate HESCO barriers. Friendly vehicles sit inside a tight ring that makes every decision feel sharp. Enemy fire tests the edge of the perimeter and throws sparks off metal. The risk of fratricide rises with each confused call sign. Technical Sergeant James Ortiz takes a hit from falling debris when part of the ceiling gives way. He stays conscious and tries to sit up. His eyes are clear, but his hands will not keep a mic steady. Direct control is no longer possible from his chair. Colonel Karen Whitaker asks for status at steady intervals while screens flicker. Power wavers, and the routing team tries to hold the map in place. Major Daniel Price circles in the stack as A-10C Hog 2-1 with Forward Air Controller Airborne Qualification. He holds south with 30mm and GBU-12. While fuel windows close fast. Rules of engagement and positive identification sit like guardrails that feel narrow. A rushed voice on the floor pushes to send it. Morgan hears that identification is not clean. Her pencil freezes over the duty log as the room leans toward a bad choice. A target grid and military grid reference system gets misread by one digit in the easting. The crosshairs slide toward the convoy, with a tiny error that has a huge cost. Morgan tracks the mistake silently on her 9-line reference without crossing authority. She highlights readback for line 4 and line 6 and keeps the abort code set as alpha. She adds a final attack heading window to keep aircraft south of the runway centerline. She draws a no-fire line north of the canal to match the ground scheme and airspace plan. Authentication checks start to fail as stress rises and calls bleed together. She prepares a clean challenge and reply card for the backup net and waits. The soundscape grows tight and claustrophobic. The room shakes with close rocket impacts, and dust hangs in the light. Radios spit fragments of call signs that never land. The plan has failed, and no heroics can fix it yet. The senior controller is down. Communications are dirty. The grid is wrong. And friendlies are in danger. No one has the authority to clear weapons except a qualified controller. The mistake is still live, and the clock shrinks with each breath. The room needs a disciplined voice to stabilize the fight without breaking the rules. Chaos climbs the walls as the combined Wing Operations Center and Base Defense Operations Center shakes. Staff Sergeant Morgan Reed stays inside her lane and reroutes traffic to a Have-Quick 2 secure net. She calls a clean time hack at 2:30 p.m. and directs all stations to push Uniform 7. Authentication discipline holds as she checks, challenge, and reply against the card. She stabilizes the picture by enforcing one transmitter at a time and trimming duplicate calls. Her hands build a complete 9-line package and stage it beside the keyboard. She highlights the required readbacks for line 4 and line 6 in clear print. Every event goes into the duty log by Zulu time with simple, steady entries. Technical Sergeant James Ortiz remains the senior Joint Terminal Attack Controller, even as pain tightens his face. He nods approval for Morgan to establish the net and prepare data. He does not delegate weapons release. The chain of authority is bright, solid, and unbroken in her mind. Morgan cross-checks the fragmentary order and the rules of engagement card before she writes. She marks danger close with the commander initials on file and records the abort code as Alpha. She annotates a final attack heading window that keeps aircraft south of the runway, center line, and clear of base airspace. A junior airman stumbles under falling debris, and she pulls him safe without losing cadence. Then confirms that positive identification is developing but not complete. She asks the forward air controller airborne to confirm they can assume tactical control if needed. The words are careful and never imply clearance. A misrouted relay clutters the flow, and she hot swaps to an ANPRC 152A as a clean backup path. Once stable, she moves control back to the primary router and logs the change. Order returns in small. Discipline beats. Timing. Authentication. And exact brevity begin to cut through the blur of alarms and the shake of the room. Morgan never says cleared hot or cleared danger close because that authority is not hers. The net settles into quiet enough space for a disciplined voice to be heard. And the data package waits ready for lawful employment by an authorized controller. The close air support net opens clean for the first time all afternoon, while Echo Convoy takes accurate fire near the Eastgate HESCO barriers. Staff Sergeant Morgan Reed sits at the desk with the microphone within reach like a tool she is not supposed to touch. The window for help is closing, and every second feels heavier than the last. If she waits for perfect alignment, the convoy may not survive. And if she speaks outside her lane, she breaks trust. She chooses the narrow path that keeps faith with the rules. Her cadence settles as she transmits a complete 9-line package under Type 2 control using clear United States terminology. She states target elevation in feet MSL and delivers the military grid reference system target location with proper breaks, while requiring readback of line 4 and line 6. She marks danger close with commander initials K, W, on file and cites abort code Alpha. She sets a final attack heading window of 165 to 195 to keep aircraft south of the runway centerline, and recommends a single GBU-12 from the south with egress east. She ties timing to convoy movement so the release window matches the sprint between cover She says that positive identification is established through correlation from the burning HESCO landmark and keeps her voice level as she reads. She requests that the forward air controller airborne assume tactical control, if able, or confirms she is relaying for the injured joint terminal attack controller by his direction. A rushed voice tries to push for send it, and the urge to answer sharp rises in the back of her throat. Morgan steadies the net by restating rules of engagement and the need for lawful clearance. Then shifts to talk on language that protects friendlies. From the burning HESCO, she pulls the crosshairs west to the correct vehicle and away from the misread grid that almost cost lives. She never authorizes weapons release and never strays from the limits that keep people safe. The room holds its breath as the last word lands with clean punctuation and no wasted sound. Radios go still in a measured silence as the air crew prepares to respond. Authority is about to shift to a qualified controller who can clear what needs to be done. One calm choice keeps the door open for survival without breaking the system. Major Daniel Price checks in as A-10 Seahawk 2-1 with forward air controller, airborne qualification. Holding south with 30mm and GBU-12. Playtime sits at about 12 minutes and fuel margins are tight. The stack is organized and waiting for a clean task. Staff Sergeant Morgan Reed takes the net with Type 2 control active and a cadence that sounds like a metronome in a loud room. She delivers the 9-line in precise United States structure. Battle position south at 4 nautical miles. Heading from the south. Distance 4. Target elevation in feet, MSL, stated clearly without rush. Target description is an enemy technical firing from a ditch near the canal east of the Eastgate HESCO barriers. With a military grid reference system target location, read in proper breaks that are easy to copy. There is no mark. So she uses talk on from the burning HESCO. Friendlies are 250 meters west. Marked by blue panel by day or infrared as appropriate. And egress is east while remaining south of the runway centerline. Remarks and restrictions are stacked for deconfliction. Final attack heading window is 165 to 195. Abort code, Alpha. Laser code, confirmed if employing GBU-12. And timing tied to convoy movement as time to target or time on target. Morgan requires readback of line 4 and line 6 and asks for confirmation of the final attack heading and abort code. A wingman returns an easting with a single wrong digit and the hair rises on the back of the room. Morgan catches the slip, corrects it without heat, and resets correlation. From the burning HESCO, 300 meters west. White Hilux under netting becomes the anchor that everyone can see. Hog 2-1 assumes tactical control as forward air controller airborne, and the authority shifts to the cockpit. Lawful clearance comes from the air, and the words cleared danger close do not come from Morgan. She remains inside her lane, maintaining the net and the timeline while identification stays solid. The picture is clean. The geometry is safe. And the convoy movement is aligned to the window. Cut to cockpit reality where switches click and hands move with economy. Master arm is set to arm. The laser is armed and code confirmed for GBU-12. And the call in hot rolls with confidence. If identification dips, off-drive follows without hesitation and the aircraft egress per brief to the east. Deconfliction holds with remain south of the runway, centerline, and no fire north of the canal. Weapons employment lands like a door closing on a storm. Quick battle damage assessment comes back with good effects and enemy fire ceased. The stack resets for a watch and the room finally breathes. Heads rise as people realize the guiding voice belongs to a quiet admin, non-commissioned officer with a taped headset who kept the net clean and the readbacks exact. And one question drifts across the air. Who is this controller? Enemy fire fades to sporadic bursts. But the job is not done. Echo convoy still sits in a shallow pocket that can trap them if they move late. Staff Sergeant Morgan Reed keeps the net steady and guides tempo without touching authority she does not own. She aligns time to target windows with the convoy sprint, so engines roll when the air is ready and silence returns when cover is thin. She requests a presence pass from A-10 Hog 21 when identification is not clean. The request is crisp and inside her lane, and the forward air controller airborne keeps clearance authority on the air. Morgan keeps the final attack heading inside 165 to 195, so aircraft remains south of the runway center line. She directs a clear no-fire line north of the canal that everyone repeats until it sticks. Friendly marking stays simple on purpose. She recommends a blue panel in daylight and an infrared strobe at night, so air and ground see the same friendlies through smoke and dust. Technical Sergeant James Ortiz remains the senior Joint Terminal Attack Controller, and his decisions stand even while he manages pain. The structure is visible in the cadence of every call, and it keeps people alive. Noise tries to return as more voices crowd the net. Morgan calls for one transmitter at a time and tightens authentication, so spoofing does not creep in while stress rises. A secondary radio hangs and muddies the relay. So she hot swaps to an ANPRC 152A to reach Echo Actual. Then hands control back to the primary router once the path is clean. The log records each change, so no one argues later about what happened and when. She summarizes the ground scheme in 3 points that anyone can repeat. Friendlies hold west of the canal. No fire north of the canal. Aircraft remain south of the runway center line, with final attack heading inside the briefed window. She cues the air stack to hold west for cover and reminds crews to go off dry if identification drops below threshold. Because procedures matter when adrenaline wants shortcuts. A small drone drifts along the approach path and threatens to pull attention off the convoy. Morgan pushes that traffic to the short-range air defense team on the correct channel, so the close air support net stays focused. The team that once brushed her off now waits for her timing calls and mirrors her cadence with shorter, cleaner answers. Any clearance comes from the forward air controller airborne. And Morgan never says, "cleared hot" or "cleared danger close." The move happens on her mark, under a tight presence pass. Echo Convoy crosses the gap in a single burst. Then halts short and sets security exactly when she calls hold. Hog 21 reports Winchester on time and intent to return to base, followed by a quick battle damage assessment that confirms good effects and no friendly casualties. The room recognizes the shift as the experts follow the non-commissioned officer they used to overlook because she sees patterns, fixes comms in real time, and only says what the fight needs to hear. Residual fire smolders near the canal, while a few rounds snap along the runway approach. Staff Sergeant Morgan Reed holds the net steady and keeps her words measured. She aligns the convoy sprint to a presence pass from A-10 Hog 21, so movement and cover meet in the same breath. Final attack heading stays inside, 165 to 195, so aircraft remain south of the runway, center line, and out of base airspace. She restates a no-fire line north of the canal, until every voice repeats it the same way. Identification must stay above threshold, or the aircraft will go off dry without hesitation. Weapons authority stays correct and simple. The forward air controller airborne on Hog 21 will issue any clearance, and Morgan will not say cleared hot or cleared danger close. Timing becomes the tool that matters most. She calls the clock in Zulu, then translates it into a natural cadence the room can feel, and gives a steady countdown at 3 seconds. She cues smoke from ground forces, if available, and ties it to time to target, so the presence pass masks the sprint. Authentication stays tight, and she allows one transmitter at a time so the net does not collapse under stress. Abort code remains alpha and sits on the edge of her tongue if correlation slips. The aircraft executes a clean show of force when identification is marginal, then slides off dry and egresses east per brief. Deconfliction stays crisp, with remain south of the runway center line and no fire north of the canal. The geometry holds, and the channel stays clear of stray traffic. Echo convoy rolls on her mark and pushes through the open gap under the roar overhead. They halt short on the far side and establish security exactly when she calls hold. And the ground picture locks into place. Hog 2-1 reports Winchester on time and intent to return to base, followed by a quick battle damage assessment that confirms good effects and no friendly casualties. The room takes a long breath while Morgan confirms friendly count and updates the duty log with the time read as 2:45 p.m. The riskiest minute closes with cadence, spacing, and lawful control intact. No luck needed to save the move. Only discipline applied at the right tempo. She keeps her tone even as the fans hum and the alarms fade back into the walls. Relief settles in as everyone recognizes quiet precision at the edge of danger. The base settles into a tense quiet as Colonel Karen Whitaker reviews the comms and Acme replay. Screens show a clean 9-line delivered in steady cadence and logged by Zulu time. Readbacks of line 4 and line 6 are correct and clear. The final attack heading restriction holds. Abort code Alpha is noted. And Hog 2-1, as forward air controller airborne, issues the lawful clearance. Staff Sergeant Morgan Reed never says cleared hot or cleared danger close at any point. She stabilizes the net, protects identification standards, and aligns timing with Echo Convoy so movement matches cover. The recording shows authentication done right and one transmitter at a time when it mattered most. The picture is disciplined, simple, and safe. Technical Sergeant James Ortiz, wounded but steady, states that her discipline kept the net alive and prevented a fratricide. The room hears the context of her past without drama. She was a former Tactical Air Control Party trainee who did not qualify as a Joint Terminal Attack Controller after a training incident. Yet she kept practicing cadence, grid math, and checklists. Colonel Whitaker acknowledges the work in plain words and records a decision to move Morgan to a command and control operations role, such as a wing command post or Air Support Operations Center support billet, with a path to pursue training updates within policy. Morgan logs the final friendly count and the time as 3:10 p.m. She steps back from the console as the room finally sees her clearly. No speeches follow. Respect fills the silence. This story asks a simple thing of us. Notice the quiet today. Competence often shows up as small habits, steady timing, and clean language that keeps people safe, under pressure and in routine hours alike. On long nights, too. Rules are not chains. They are guardrails built from lessons that cost blood. And they protect trust when seconds are slipping away while fear blurs edges. Here is the question to carry with you today. When the room grows loud and the clock is burning down, how do you balance orders and instinct without breaking trust? Share a moment when you were overlooked but stayed steady and did the job right. Told as you lived it. No polish. Tell us the radio line that stuck with you. Maybe 1 digit off is a funeral, or type 2 in effect. And why it matters in your world. If this kind of grounded storytelling speaks to you, to like, share, and subscribe. And tag someone who keeps things calm when the room gets loud. Thank you to those who serve and those who support. And carry one clear takeaway into tomorrow. In a room full of noise, clarity truly saves people and steady hands.